The notice had been there so long that the paper had gone soft at the corners and the ink had faded to the color of old straw. Ida Sorrel read it twice, because the first time she thought she must have misread it. Wanted, cook, steady work, fair wages, room and board. Inquire at the Penn Ranch, Caldwell Road, 3 miles east of Harlan's Mill. The words were simple. The paper was weathered. The date stamped at the bottom was 4 months ago. She was standing in front of Harlan's general store with 31 cents in her coat pocket and 3 children sitting in the wagon behind her. The children did not make noise. They had learned not to. Ida folded the notice and put it in her pocket. She climbed back into the wagon. Her son George, aged 12, held the reins. He did not ask where they were going. He had learned not to ask that either. East, she said, 3 miles. The drought had taken the farm in August. Walter Sorrel had died of a wasting sickness the spring before that, leaving Ida with a farm, 3 children and debts she had not known existed. She had planted, she had prayed, the rain had not come. The corn had gone silver and brittle in the fields, and in the end the bank had taken the title and left her the wagon and the horse and whatever she could carry. She had been carrying it for 6 weeks now. The Penn Ranch appeared through a stand of cottonwoods that looked almost as tired as she was. The house was plain, unpainted clapboard, a stone chimney, a porch that needed the 3rd step replaced. But the roof was sound. She could see that from the road, and the fence posts were straight, and there was a well. Ida noted the well the way a woman notes water when she has gone without it. She set the brake and climbed down without waiting for help. Her daughter Elsa, age 9, handed down the baby, Will, not yet 2, heavy and solemn against Ida's shoulder. George tied the horse. They walked up to the porch together, the 4 of them, and Ida knocked. The man who opened the door looked like he had been expecting no one. He was tall, angular, with a week's worth of dark beard and eyes the color of winter creek water. He looked at Ida. He looked at George. He looked at Elsa. He looked at Will. Then he looked back at Ida. "I saw the notice," she said, "in town, about the cook. That notice has been up since May." "I know. I'm sorry it took me so long to find it." She did not smile. She was too tired to pretend. "I can cook, Mr. Penn. Anything you put in front of me. I can bake bread, cure meat, put up preserves, keep a clean kitchen. I work hard and I ask for nothing I don't earn." Isaiah Penn looked at the children again. "How many of them?" 3. George is 12. Elsa's 9. Will isn't walking proper yet, but he's quiet. She held Will a little tighter. "They won't be in your way." Isaiah Penn said nothing for a long moment. The silence was the kind that had weight to it. "I wanted a cook," he said finally, "not a family." "I know," Ida said. "I'm not asking you to want one. I'm asking you to let us earn our keep." He looked at her for another long moment, and then he stepped back from the door. "Kitchen's in the back," he said. "Flour's in the larder. There's a side of salt pork that needs using." He did not say welcome, but he stepped back, and that was enough. Ida set Will on her hip, looked at Elsa and George, and walked inside without ceremony. She had learned not to make anything larger than it needed to be. Isaiah Penn had run the ranch alone for 3 years, since his wife had passed and his one hired hand had gone to California chasing silver. He was not a man who said more than he needed to, and he did not know what to do with a house that had a woman in it and children making small sounds in the corners of rooms. He found it strange and not entirely unwelcome. Ida was as good as her word. She was in the kitchen before he had his boots on in the morning, and she was still working when he came in for supper. The meals were plain but hot and well seasoned, the kind of food that steadied a man for a day's work. She kept the kitchen clean and the larder organized, and she did not bother him. What he noticed, after a week, was that she never complained. The mattress in the storeroom was thin. The stove drew poorly in the north wind. The pump handle stuck. She dealt with each thing quietly. without comment, and when he fixed the pump handle on the third day, because he could not unknow it needed fixing, she said thank you in a tone that did not make it into more than it was. He noticed other things, the way George was up before dawn, already at work in the yard, the way Elsa carried Will on her hip when Ida needed both hands, the way the children watched their mother, and the way she watched over them, steady, without fuss, the way a person watches over something they will not let be taken from them again. He asked Ida once, in the evening, what had brought her to Harlan's mill. Drought, she said, same thing that brought everyone. Where before that? A farm, 4 counties east. She was mending a shirt, one of his, he realized, with a collar stay he had been meaning to fix. My husband died in the spring. I held on as long as I could. Children that young, Isaiah said, hard going. Yes, she said, and she did not say more, because she had not asked for his pity and she was not going to accept it accidentally. He had not meant to offer pity. He was not sure, now, what he had meant. He found himself eating slower in the evenings, sitting a few minutes longer after the plate was cleared, not because the food required it, but because the kitchen had a different quality to it now, warm in a way that had nothing to do with the stove, occupied in a way that made the silence between spoken words feel restful rather than hollow. He did not examine this feeling closely. He was not in the habit of examining his feelings closely. He simply stayed a little longer each night and told himself it was because the lamp gave better light for reading than the one in his bedroom. October turned bitter early. The drought broke not gently but violently, in the way the plains sometimes chose, 3 days of cold rain that turned the yard to mud and swelled the creek to the edge of its banks. Isaiah spent those days working the cattle to higher ground, and on the second night he came in soaked to the bone to find the kitchen warm and a lamp lit on the table, and a pot of soup that smelled of onion and dried thyme. Ida was at the table with the mending. Will was asleep on the settle. She did not look up right away, and when she did, she looked at his face before she looked at his wet clothes, and he did not know what that meant, but he felt it somewhere below his ribs. Sit, she said, I'll get the bowl. I can get it. You've been in the cold for 12 hours, she said. Sit down. He sat. The soup was hot and good. He ate in silence and she went back to her mending, and Will slept, and the rain came against the window, and the lamp threw warm light across the table. It was the most ordinary evening imaginable, and Isaiah Penn could not remember the last time he had sat at a table that felt like a table was supposed to feel. He did not say anything, but he did not leave either. The crisis came on the third morning of rain, when the creek overran its banks and the water came into the low pasture where Isaiah kept his winter hay. He was out before dawn, and it was George who came running to find him. The boy had gotten up before Ida, had seen the water from the kitchen window, had pulled his boots on without waking anyone. The hay, George said. The water's got into the stack. They worked together in the dark and the rain, Isaiah and George, moving what hay they could to the barn on the sledge. It was hard, soaking work, and the boy worked without complaint, matching Isaiah's pace and asking no credit for it. When they got the last of what could be saved into the barn, both of them were caked in mud to the knee. Isaiah looked at the boy. 12 years old, his father's eyes gone, and here he was in the mud before sunrise pulling a man's load without being asked. You didn't have to do that, Isaiah said. George looked at him steadily. You'd have lost a quarter of your winter feed. That's my concern, not yours. You took us in, George said simply, and he went back to the house to change. Isaiah stood in the rain for a moment, looking at the barn. Then he went inside too. Ida was at the stove. She looked at him, really looked, the way she had the night before, and she said nothing for a moment. Then she said, There's dry clothes on the chair by the stove. George's too. He changed in the back room and came out to find a plate of biscuits on the table and George already sitting, changed. eating with the focused quiet of a boy who is hungry and not going to apologize for it. Elsa had Will in her lap. The kitchen was warm and full of people, and Isaiah stood in the doorway looking at it as though he had forgotten it could be that. He sat down without being asked. He ate a biscuit without speaking. Elsa looked up at him with her mother's careful eyes and offered him the butter dish, and he thanked her, and she nodded, solemn as a judge, and went back to watching Will. The rain kept on through the morning. Sometime after the noon hour, when the cattle were settled and the barn was checked, and there was nothing left to do outdoors, Isaiah found himself back in the kitchen again, sitting across from Ida while she set the bread to rise. She was not talking. She rarely did unless there was something worth saying. He had come to appreciate that more than he expected. "Mrs. Sorrel," he said. Ida turned from the stove. "The notice in town," he said. "I never took it down because I kept not finding the right person." He looked at his hands. "I think I was looking for the wrong thing." She waited. "I'm asking if you'd consider staying," he said, not as the cook, as more than that. He said it carefully, plainly, the way a man says something he has been thinking about for a while and is not used to saying aloud. "The children too, all of them, as long as you wanted." Ida was quiet for a long time. Will reached up and patted her cheek, and she caught his hand and held it. "I'd want to know it was real," she said at last, "not charity." "It's not charity," Isaiah said. "I've had 3 years of an empty house and I know the difference." Elsa very quietly took George's hand under the table. Ida looked at Isaiah Penn for a moment, at his weathered face and his straight posture and the kindness he was not used to showing, and she said, "Then yes." The rain had stopped by noon. Isaiah took the old notice down from the post at Harlan's general store that afternoon. He did not put another one up. There was nothing more he needed. That winter, the ranch ran as it had not run in years, warm and fed and full of small sounds that Isaiah had not known he was missing. In the evening, Ida sat across from him at the table, mending or reading, and he would look up sometimes and find her already looking, and neither of them would look away. It was a quiet thing, the love that built between them. It did not ask to be seen. It only asked to last. And it did.